Nigeria has been selected to host the African Energy Bank, AEB, in Abuja, overcoming competition from the Ivory Coast. The AEB, formed by the African Petroleum Producers Organization, APO, and Cairo-based Afrexim Bank, aims to finance oil, gas and energy projects due to the withdrawal of foreign institutions from fossil fuel investments. Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Tolulope Aderemi, affirmed Nigeria's commitment to establishing the AEB, which will support sustainable and innovative energy solutions across Africa. Well, joining me for more on this is Tolulope Aderemi, partner, Perchstone Graeys LP. Thank you, Tolu, for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right, did you see this coming? I mean, Nigeria being chosen as headquarters of AEB.
Oh, yes, certainly. So the negotiation of the lobbying has been on for quite some months, apparently, as far back as February, end of January, early February. And the front contenders, really, were Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and I think one or two other African countries. And it was intense lobbying, reason being that for Ghana in particular, the fact that, the CFTA headquarters, that's the AFTA's headquarters, is domiciled in Ghana, it just made more sense that because we've now liberated trade across the continent, it's just commonsensical to have, the Africa Energy Bank also located in Ghana. Now, for Nigeria, and I think I'm very proud, that this eventually came to Nigeria. It didn't come to Nigeria just because Nigeria was a better lobbyist. No, I think Nigeria was selected for peculiar reasons, which I can say is unique to Nigeria across the continent. And for me, this further underscores the superiority and the supremacy of the Nigerian economy, the Nigerian government across the continent as the largest, market, in Africa, and of course now the chairman of ECOWAS. So I think it's good. I wouldn't call it victory really, but I think it's good omen for the country. For our macro and microeconomics, I think it also portends, a good dividend to the Nigerian government. So well, yes, I saw it coming.
Oh, you did see it coming. So tell us, I mean, I know you tried to sort of play around it, but specifically, really, what factors worked in Nigeria's favor?
All right. So I think there were about 3 or 4 criteria, right, which the country that will eventually succeed, must have ticked the box. The first one is that you must have the ability to have easy travel access. Now, you will agree with me that if you look at the map, really, and I'm not a geographer, so you'll forgive me, but if you look at the map, you will discover that amongst the African countries, Nigeria is one of, maybe perhaps the only country that travel to, becomes easy access. The other time we're going to do something in Rwanda, from Nigeria, it was going to take almost about 6 hours or thereabout, to be able to get there. So easy travel access was one major factor that was considered. Another important consideration was essential hospitals or essential amenities, i.e. hospitals, schools, etc. Now, because this is a bank that is going to be impacting the energy sector as a byproduct, or what you call, I can't recall what it's called now. If I recall, I'll let you know. But as a byproduct of it, whoever is going to be playing in that market must certainly also impact these secondary sectors. And these secondary sectors, they include primary schools, they include hospitals, essentially social amenities of the country. So one, they must be prevalent. Secondly, you must also be able to impact upon them. And thirdly, there must be evidence of such having been done in the past. Now, across the continent, Nigeria is the only country where oil and gas at the upstream level in particular is played at the highest level. And so this mechanism already, is in place. The major IOCs are already used to it. The indigenous companies are also already used to it, either for their own consumption or for them to impact upon. The third consideration is that that country must also be a signatory to the bank's charter. I think that any of the countries bidding for it would also have been able to take it. Consideration for a suitable building as headquarters. Now, you'll agree with me that Abuja warehouses one of the biggest headquarters across the continent. I mean, when you look at some of the headquarters in Abuja, it just remind you, of New York. And I think finally, which for me personally, I also found very interesting, is the fact that the winning country must maintain a clean financial record with the organization. I think this is quite impressive, that despite the challenges that the country is facing, at the moment, we were able to continue to maintain a clean financial record with the African petroleum operator. So I think these were the major criteria that, was. Ghana came close, even though it came, I think, a distant third or fourth. But I think one of the problems Ghana had was questions relating to electricity. Now, you will argue that does Nigeria not have the same challenge? Yes, we do. But to the extent that where Ghana is a feedstock, from Nigeria, it put Nigeria a step ahead of Ghana. So I think in summary, some of the things Nigeria consider, or we consider as Nigerians, to be challenges or endemic challenges of our market, where properly reviewed and packaged, would actually attract us, to things like, the African Energy Bank. And I think for me, it's a big win for the country. It has its overriding consequential commercial and economic impact or effect on the economy. I'm sure we'll probably come to that at some point.
Okay, so this particular bank, I want us to get back to the bank and talk about the bank now. AEB was formed to offer an alternative source of finance for oil, gas, and energy projects on the continent. And this is because of the retreat of many foreign institutions, from lending for fossil fuel development. So what do you make of this initiative, and what impact do you anticipate as a result of it?
Thank you very much. In fact, when the news came out late last year, it hit me with a shock. It hit me with a shock because in our London office, this is a structure we had already started contemplating. And we're contemplating it because when you look at the recent bid rounds and the penultimate bid rounds, in fact, almost of the other bid rounds, the reason why we have bid rounds, consistent bid rounds in the country, is simply because the winners of those assets are not able to finance them, whether by way of signature. In fact, most of them get cut short or cut off at the signature bonus level. But even if you struggle to cross the signature bonus hurdle, you are unable to raise money until you get to first trial. So it's always been a problem. And so when you find out that certain companies have been awarded assets, they come up with, you can have joint bids and the bids will look very good and you can win the bids. But when it comes to raising the physical cash for signature bonus or even to start exploration and production, it's always a challenge. So we were coming up, with what we thought was also very ingenious, where we create a pool of funds from where these indigenous companies can borrow from. Now, when you're borrowing foreign exchange, and so let me just give you the typical example of it. You're borrowing foreign exchange or you're borrowing foreign currency to manufacture locally. The good part of it is that the byproduct of that your exercise is also going to be sold in dollars. Now, if the policy, which I understand is coming up, comes up, and the product are sold to a Dangote refinery in Naira, it helps to strengthen the Naira, but the challenge with that is that your foreign exposure in terms of loans it is going to now start struggling. And the reason being that you borrowed in foreign exchange and you are earning in Naira. So for us, this bank is coming at a very good time. It's going to impact on the indigenous companies quite positively. They can borrow from, of course, provided they meet the criteria. And really, the criteria for me, I don't know what they will do, but the commonsensical thing to do is that you must have an asset And secondly, that asset must be producing, or at the minimum have evidence of a 2P production. Are you with me? And so once you have that evidence of it, then it's clear that, and then you must also have evidence that you have good technical and financial support. Once you have those three things, then the bank is able, to borrow you money for as long as you're able to meet first oil. And once you meet first oil, then you have an agreed, repayment. It's almost typical or similar to the FTSA, Financial and Technical Services Arrangement that we have today, where you bring in a third party to come and finance, an E&P project, and then you have an agreed or an agreement as to the cost of funding. I want to also believe that the African Energy Bank, and I see that it's going to be capitalized with about $5 billion to start with. That's not enough money to operate in the oil and gas sector. So I'm hoping that, yes, it's good seed capital, but as we move ahead, I think it's important, that capital be shored up, because the cost of funding ERP operations is quite steep as I practice in that area.
Well, I think you've already started on this note, because I was going to ask you about the factors that can sort of hinder this particular project. I mean, challenges that could come in the way.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so there are challenges that I'm sure you and I both know. And one of those challenges, as you may well know, is matters relating to security or insecurity. The recent divestments that we've had from our IOC partners of their onshore assets is essentially or largely based on security or insecurity, if you like. And quite a number of them are moving offshore. When you look at the portfolio of assets that are now up for this current bid round, is a combine of both offshore and onshore assets. So the bank, I imagine, will expect that the companies that will come to it for lending will also have de-risked that part of the business, either by the use of technology, so ensure that you must have been monitoring the pipelines. And there are technologies that are now used to monitor the pipelines. We also know of technologies that you can use to divert crude oil, not for purposes of theft, but for purposes of anticipatory theft. And so when legitimately, you're piping your crude through a pipeline, the technology will discover ahead of, I think it's about 3 kilometers away, whether there's been adjunct pipelines attached to the main pipeline for purposes of crude theft. So once he detects it, he will just divert the crude away. So players or potential borrowers must start thinking of what the endemic problems are today, and then start making provisioning for how they will surmount it. Otherwise, the banks will still not borrow. Bureaucracy is also another one. And what is bureaucracy? In a recent interview I granted, I said, look, the reason why we're not meeting our OPEC quota sometimes is not really largely dependent on insecurity, no.
Okay.
It's more dependent on the bureaucracy of approvals from the regulator.
Right.
And so when you are divesting and there's no quick approval from the regulator, the divesting party stops investing, the acquiring party also stops investing, and then you put the asset in limbo and nobody's funding it. And when you are in that situation, there's no way you can continue to produce.
Okay.
And then accrued oil production goes shortfall.
Tolulope Aderemi, partner Perchstone Graeys LP, thank you for your time and your thoughts on the show today.
Thank you very much.